Did you know The Legend of Zelda? Echoes of Wisdom is the first mainline Zelda game where Princess Zelda is the protagonist of her own adventure. Zelda had been playable in spin-offs and other titles before, but Echoes of Wisdom finally gave her the starring role in a traditional main series adventure. The game was developed by Nintendo and Grezzo, the studio behind the 2019 remake of Link's Awakening, but it actually began with a completely different concept. Grezzo spent around a year experimenting with an edit dungeon system, where Link could copy objects like doors, tables and candlesticks and paste them into his own dungeons. Eiji Aonuma enjoyed the idea, but realised those same objects could be far more interesting if players were allowed to use them throughout the actual adventure. That eventually evolved into the Echo system. Grezzo generated so many ideas during early development that it took the team 3 days just to review all the proposals, with designers and programmers contributing alongside the planners. Interestingly, Link was originally still the protagonist. The problem was that once Link had a sword and shield, testers naturally wanted to use them instead of experimenting with echoes. The team even considered giving Link his traditional weapons later in the game, but realised players would probably abandon the echo mechanic as soon as they got them. That helped lead to Zelda taking the starring role. Zelda's hood even has a hidden bit of storytelling behind it. It's actually Link's hood from the beginning of the game, with Zelda inheriting it for her journey as a reminder that she's searching for him. Sword Fighter form was then created as a way of letting Zelda temporarily imitate Link without undermining the echo system. Some echoes were surprisingly difficult to create. Water blocks caused particular headaches because they had to function in both the top-down and side-scrolling sections of the game. Developers managed to connect the cubes together, only to discover that Zelda would sometimes simply fall through the joins while swimming between them. And with more than 100 echoes to account for, the team had to test what happened when creatures and objects were taken completely outside the areas they were designed for. The finished game actually contains 127 collectible echoes. Nintendo initially considered restricting players to things like only 20 echoes inside a dungeon, but eventually scrapped those rules. This led to the team's development philosophy of being mischievous. If a solution looked ridiculous, unexpected, or almost like cheating, they wanted to allow it whenever possible. Their internal guidelines specifically encourage placing things almost anywhere and solving puzzles with objects the designers hadn't necessarily intended. Aonuma even pointed to the famous Miam Agana shrine trick in Breath of the Wild, where players can flip the motion control maze upside down and simply use the flat underside, as exactly the kind of behaviour they wanted to encourage. Even the story went through an unusual development process. Nintendo and Grezzo held what they called story boot camps, spending a total of 9 days working from morning until night. During one of them, Aonuma went back to his hotel, quickly wrote a version of the story himself and brought it in the following morning for the rest of the team to build upon. There are plenty of nods for long-time Zelda fans too. Dampé, the creepy gravekeeper introduced in Ocarina of Time, returns as an engineer who constructs optional automatons for Zelda. It's especially fitting because in Grezzo's Link's Awakening remake, Dampé was the character responsible for the Chamber Dungeon creator, the very game whose dungeon building ideas helped lead towards Echoes of Wisdom in the first place. The soundtrack also sneaks in musical memories from older games. The Hyrule Ranch music begins with notes recalling Epona's song, while the Sea Zora village music echoes elements of the classic Zora's Domain theme. And Nintendo later officially placed Echoes of Wisdom on the Zelda timeline after Triforce Heroes and before the decline of the Kingdom of Hyrule, putting it on the branch that eventually leads into the original NES Legend of Zelda. The world itself also became much bigger than originally intended. It was first planned to be around 4 times the size of Link's Awakening, but during development that expanded to roughly 8 times larger. Echoes of Wisdom sold 200,000 physical copies in Japan during its first week, and by March 2025 had reached 4 million copies worldwide. Find more on switchplaza.net